Welcome back, hodlers. Today we are going over the crypto market in total, the whole thing, and we are also going to be taking a special look at Bitcoin because it's important to look at Bitcoin when we're talking about the total crypto market. Before we get into it, I'd really appreciate a like on this video. Also, comment down below what you think of my assessment today, and of course, subscribe for more crypto news and content. Let's go ahead and get into it. The first piece of news that I wanted to talk about before I get into the charts is an article from the Daily Hodl talking about how the Bitcoin supply shock is incoming, basically saying that there's going to be a shock, a supply and demand shock. There's going to be not enough Bitcoin for the amount of people that want to buy it. Now, this assessment is coming from Skybridge Capital. They're looking at on-chain data and saying that the bulls have essentially reasserted themselves or trying to reassert themselves. There is more demand for buying Bitcoin, buying cryptocurrencies. So it is kind of making a decision on the upswing in terms of where the sentiment is going. But of course, too, if you look at the fear and greed index, the fear and greed index is still in extreme fear. But I'd probably say this represents the majority of the market, but most hodlers know exactly what's going on here. But they do go through and discuss that there is basically more demand right now for buying Bitcoin rather than selling it, and more people withdrawing their Bitcoin off an exchange. To represent that, we're actually looking at the Bitcoin BTC all reserves on exchanges, essentially. So all exchange reserves, this is all the major exchanges, and this shows the representation of what's happened in the last little while. Now, of course, we've dropped a little bit of reserves, but you can see now that we're consistently dropping in reserves, which tells us a lot that hodlers and whales are probably more reserved at this point. Even this spike could have been a representative of that spike that big whale bought. But there's a lot of information here telling us that right now people are holding Bitcoin and Bitcoin is coming off of exchanges, which is a very similar thing that happened before we even saw a pump in the first place. And we can see that actually here, you can see the drop in reserves. Now, the reason why I mentioned this, because I know it's not a big drop, but you got to factor in where exactly we are in the total market. And over time, this is going to become less and less. I drastically think that we're going to have a reserve crisis for Bitcoin on exchanges. The next bullish chart that I wanted to take a look at is the miner net position for Bitcoin, how that's changed over time. Now we can see the big drop off this Wyckoff accumulation. Now, of course, they kind of leveled off here. They didn't quite sell, and then they just distributed through this kind of area. I'm not exactly sure why, but I think a lot of this has to do with the Chinese sell-off. I think that's probably a good amount of these miners were from China and had a lot of those banning issues that were happening. But now it seems that the pressure has switched and miners are essentially holding onto their Bitcoin, which means that it's not as profitable as before to mine Bitcoin. We know that by the Pure multiplier that we looked at in another video, but we do see miners holding on because they're expecting better days to come. And of course, better days are going to come. It's just about when are those days going to come, and that's what everyone needs to be prepared for. Now, if we look at the Bitcoin chart right now, the Bitcoin chart is currently sitting at 32,725, but with Bitcoin in general, we've still basically traded within this level. So I'm moving to the daily chart just to discuss this fairly quickly. Now, we are clearly at this point wedging up. I know I said before that I'm not sure that we're completely wedging up. I say at this point we are definitely making a wedge formation. So Bitcoin is eventually going to have to come to some sort of decisive move, whether that is to the upside or to the downside. Now, I know that seems a little like, oh, why can't you tell me which one it is? Like, why can't we predict that? It's about the formation, and if it wasn't wedging up in the center, then we could probably more decisively say it's going to go up or it's going to go down. But the thing is, we also have to factor in exactly where we are in the market. Now, we know that sure, we are in the bullish part of the market cycle. So we have the grander market cycle that lasts however long a market cycle is going to last. And we can speculate that that's most likely longer than the previous market cycles, of course. But that being said, we're still in a dramatically bearish trend, because if we look at the bull market support band, we're still under the bull market support band. So there's still a lot to be done to get above that point. So that being said, it is just as likely that we could see a move to the downside, and even a little bit of an extended move to the downside, but possibly definitely a retest of the 50-week moving average and going down below that. So looking at the 50-week moving average, now Bitcoin has dropped below the 50-week numerous times before, but most times it's just been down in this zone, down here, and down here. So right after market peaks is the only time that Bitcoin has ever kind of done moves like this under the 50-week. However, there was this move here. Now we've tested the 50-week, right? So we've constantly kind of rubbed up on the 50-week a little bit, but not a dramatic amount. This is going to be one of the few times that we're actually testing the 50-week and we could possibly not have had a market peak. Now, that could mean that we could potentially fall below the 50-week. Right now, it is going to act as a line of support. The longer that we're below it, if we do go below it, then it'll act as a line of resistance. Now, do I think that we're going to hit the 50-week and go below it? I'm not quite sure. I think either way, this decision, whatever it is going to be, whether it goes up to the upside or down to the downside, I think it's just going to be volatile any which way. Because if it does go up to the upside, it has the support to bounce off of the 50-week moving average. If it does go down to the downside, it could potentially stay down there for a little bit before making its way back up, and we could see a sub 30k Bitcoin. That being said, I still think what we previously talked about lengthening market cycles and moving through a more long-term market cycle than before, because we can clearly see that this market cycle is nowhere even close to what 2017 was in terms of length. We know that this year is incredibly volatile. We have the DXY and everything else, the dollar index, but Bitcoin is going to make a decision whether it goes up to the upside or down to the downside. I know it sounds like a cop-out, but it is what it is. Now, one big thing to keep in mind as well, on top of all of this, because I know we talk a lot about cryptocurrency here, but it's important to know what traditional currency, the US dollar, is actually doing right now. The US dollar, the dollar index, the DXY, is currently pumping. It has been pumping over the last little while. If we're looking at the weekly chart, if we switch this to the daily, we can see a similar trend. We are seeing a downturn now. We are like having a red day, but that doesn't necessarily mean anything about the trend. Now, what does this mean exactly? And usually when the dollar index goes up, Bitcoin is going to go down because Bitcoin's losing value to the dollar. So typically, dollar index goes up, Bitcoin's going to go down, even though Bitcoin's trading level. So that's to be expected. So this could be why we're seeing such a little bit of a dip now, because of the DXY. Even now we're looking at a bit of a green candle, but that could be attributed more to the DXY kind of going up. Now, it doesn't mean that Bitcoin's dictated to the DXY at all. It just means that whatever the DXY does, it's going to impact Bitcoin, at least in the near term. But same thing goes. When the DXY goes down, Bitcoin goes way up. So it just goes both ways. And eventually, that's the real scenario. Because if you think that fiat currency is going to be the future of money, I got a bridge to sell you. Going into some other cryptocurrencies and some other buys, Cardano, we've discussed where we should buy Cardano. We've said basically anything below $1.50 is a steal for Cardano, and we see it pushing up on our line of support now at $1.26. I would say buy at this price, but of course it can go lower if Bitcoin drags it down, but it won't go too low. So I would probably set your buy orders to maybe $1.15, maybe even $1.10, and then $1, and then go sub $1 at that point. But I wouldn't go too low because Cardano has held a good amount of value. It has a lot of support at this level. It held $1.50 pretty strong without having been at $1.50 for long. But this is a hard support line. We've been trading around this level for a while, and I can't see Cardano falling through that much. And even if it does, it won't be for long. Ethereum has broken our 2,000 mark, gone down to 1990. But it's still holding on to a considerable amount of value. And again, EIP 1559 is probably holding up Ethereum's price at this point and doing a lot of favors for the blockchain. So I would say, Ethereum, sure, it might be a DCA like I've been doing before. But at this point, I probably wouldn't be buying Ethereum at any crazy rate. Maybe sub 1700 for Ethereum is more an active buying price. KSM has dropped to 186 today, and DOT is at 13.69. So both blockchains that I'm hugely bullish on are on complete sale. DOT is losing so much support at this level, but we will see exactly where DOT falls to, if DOT falls at all. But hopefully, because it seems that this is a type of line of support at this point, hopefully we see DOT recover. It was doing good before, but I understand that everything's going to get drawn down with Bitcoin. Another token that I don't talk about enough, but I'm always seeing it and I'm always wondering why I'm not making dedicated videos to this token is VeChain. VeChain has still held on to a lot of its value back in March. And that's basically the sport line that we're rubbing up on now. And VeChain is an absolute steal even at this price. But if it goes below these levels, maybe sub 6 cents, I'd absolutely be stocking up on your VeChain bags and going from there. So just to leave it on a good note, I just wanted to stress holding your tokens are always going to be beneficial for you. It's consistently been what's worked for a lot of hodlers, and they've always made themselves a good, healthy amount of money. Sure, you can make a lot of money day trading. Sure, you can make a lot of money swapping through your cryptos and everything else. But I'd say holding on to good projects is going to net you the highest return over time. Now, with Bitcoin dropping down, we could see Bitcoin go back up at a later time, but that also increases the amount that it could be. So it's not bad if Bitcoin trades in this zone for roughly 4 months plus. I could even see a situation that Bitcoin is trading like this all the way until July of 2022. It's a very realistic possibility, but I know a lot of people don't like to hear that. That's specifically why I left it in the end of the video, so people just didn't dislike because I heard that in the get-go. People get too emotional when they hear about their crypto going down. Just hold for the long term and it's going to be okay. Hopefully you guys enjoyed this video. Go ahead and give me a like, subscribe to the channel for more crypto news and content, and of course, happy hodling.